resolve the conflict in that region. The meeting of President Yeltsin with the leaders of the executive branches of the republics which are part of the Russian Federation began today without a predetermined agenda. They discussed mainly economic reform and the conclusion of a new federation treaty. It is supposed that the new treaty will be discussed in a heads of state meeting in Moscow in mid-March. President Yeltsin is concerned with the delay of the reform. What do you think is the main reason for this? The decrees and measures of the government are not being implemented in a timely fashion, especially those regarding privatization and economic reform. Therefore, I believe that we must work on all levels, at the level of the president and on the Republican and local levels, in order not to hinder the radical economic reform. It is true that Boris Yeltsin, in my opinion, is very wisely, and in light of all the long discussions, understands that we need a federation treaty. The power of Russia will gather strength, the strength of Russia and the republics which are part of the Russian Federation. The second point is, if the republics take more responsibility on themselves, then the reform will move more quickly. In Kiev, there was created a Russian association which will develop the traditions of Russian culture, including a Russian Sunday school. The Republic is looking for an independent way out of the crisis in conditions of inflation, decline in production, and the disruption of traditional economic ties. In the office of Witold Fokin, you hear sharp criticism from the parliament and trade unions. The main thing that we want to demand from the government is to ensure that all these reforms, including measures for destatization and privatization, do not occur to the detriment of labor collectives and workers. The second issue is that social protection should have an obligatory nature. The temporary government price regulation established by the Ukrainian president recently has calmed the citizenry somewhat. However, experts believe it is affecting the speed of the development of entrepreneurialism. All of the commercial structures in the Republic are now striving not to invest their capital in Ukraine. And this instability, which exists in the economy of Ukraine, is hindering the arrival of foreign capital. I believe that in the near future, I know that the President and the economic service are preparing measures to stimulate the economy and entrepreneurialism. The final predictions, the last predictions on the coming death of the ruble in Ukraine are not being confirmed. I bought these coupons at a 1-to-1 exchange rate. The Supreme Soviet of Crimea today said that the issue of secession from Ukraine was not raised. The words from the Constitution saying that Crimea is part of the Ukraine were removed from the Constitution, but our correspondent reports that this was not a decision for secession. The Crimean Supreme Soviet today, since it remains part of the Ukraine, began discussing the division of powers with Kiev today. In Belarus, there is a movement for a speedy dispersal of the parliament, and there is a petition drive for a referendum. This meeting expressed demands which ended up on the agenda of the legislature today. They seek a change in the top leadership of the Republic. In order to make the referendum legal, they must collect 350,000 signatures. Only then will new elections be called. The signature collection has already begun. Who are the initiators of this referendum movement? Practically all the democratic forces of Belarus are appealing in a unified front for a referendum. How did the idea come about? The fact that our Supreme Soviet is not consistent with the needs of our people. This became clear several months after it was elected. We must keep in mind that this Supreme Soviet was chosen as the legislature of the Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic when the Communist Party had a monopoly on power. As a result of this, 86% of the deputies are communists. This situation has changed radically now. This Supreme Soviet does not have, shall we say, an understanding of itself as the parliament of an independent state. The economic decline, the increase in prices, the decline in social protection, all of this, of course, influences the mood of the people. Are you for or against the referendum? I'm against it. Why should we toss these people out? Who will we choose? I believe that it's necessary to hold a referendum because the Democratic Front is an organization which expresses the interests of young people. I think the powers which are in power now should have to answer for their work. It doesn't matter to me as long as our life gets better. Serious debates on the citizenship law continued in the Supreme Soviet for over a year. The main bone of contention was the fate of the non-native population, that is, people who came to Estonia after the coup d'etat of 1940. The Russian deputies proposed the so-called zero option, which would ensure that all people currently residing in the Republic would automatically receive citizenship. Since the non-native population is 1/3 of the total, the Estonian Committee sees in it a threat of extinction in the future. Now the deputies have adopted a compromise version. All people will automatically receive citizenship who lived in the Republic before 1940 and their direct descendants. For all the rest, there will be a census on seniority. The 2 years beginning March 30th of this year, that is the signing date of the Declaration of Independence of Estonia. At the end of this time, that is after 1 month, all people who want citizenship can make application, but this will not apply to military personnel of other states, including the CIS Army and people who worked in the KGB and other repressive organs of the former Soviet Union. Knowledge of the Estonian language is one of the conditions for receiving citizenship. In Bashkiria, the Supreme Soviet has adopted a new official name of the Republic, Bashkortostan. On the new Bashkirian blue and white flag, the hammer and sickle and 5-pointed star remain. 65 deputies of the Kazan City Council appealed to the residents of Tatarstan to vote against the March 21st referendum for secession from the Russian Republic. Today in Tashkent, the Congress of Muslims of Central Asia and Kazakhstan completed its work. We waited with impatience for the results of this Kurultai Congress. One of the delicate issues here was the election of the Mufti. It's no secret here that the religious opposition in its power struggle is trying to split the Central Asian spiritual leadership by expressing their opposition to the Mufti. There were several unfounded publications published by journalists looking for sensational news. However, the many positive changes, the rebirth of spiritualism, the opening of many mosques, and the distribution of the Quran are credited to the incumbent Mufti, and they unanimously elected him for another 5-year term, which testifies to his great authority in the Muslim world. Today, we heard many times about Islamic fundamentalism. However, this is untrue. There are people who want to sow conflict between religious people and the government to create a schism among believers, but this should not be permitted. We believe the Quran and Islam should not be reactionary. 2 years ago, this Krasnoyarsk Fund for Survival was created. Since then, it's been undertaking scientific analysis and blocking many industrial projects, including the construction of this giant facility on the Yenisei River for reprocessing radioactive waste. On the table here is a map of the Father Yenisei River. The red color along the banks shows radiation. We received this map from geologists who made a very careful analysis. They checked the radiation levels 3 times, but 2.5 years ago we found out some new information. From the entire country, nuclear waste has been brought here from the nuclear power plants. There's a basin with 1,300 units of nuclear waste. By the end of the century it will be full. These uranium containers deteriorate in 25 to 30 years. I think that before it's too late, we should start a lawsuit of 1 billion rubles on the behalf of the residents of Krasnoyarsk for the health problems and the fear and terror they will suffer from living around this threat from these enterprises. Our correspondent in Bonn reported yesterday on the sale of our uranium in the West. New confirmation from Paris came today. Our correspondent tried to get the videotape with the details of the deal. He is Sergei Izuitov. We talked with him by telephone. The private firm CCV, which has the materials on